I'm delighted to say that Richard Tice, the leader of the Reform Party, is joining us live in the LBC studio. Richard, thanks so much for joining us.
Very good morning. It's a busy time, yes. Full-on election.
Yeah, I've got to start really with your reaction to the national service idea. Is this something that you would approve of? Some people might think it was something Reform might quite like, or your voters might quite like.
Look, it sounds nice on paper, in theory, until you dig down just about a few centimetres to realise that actually, in practice, in reality, it's completely unworkable. The military don't want it. You only got 75,000 people in the army, and they can't work it. What we should be doing, that used to be 100,000 people 10 years ago. And there's a separate point where actually you could say that some form of civic duty, contribution to national life could be very sensible, but you've got to look in the details. They've clearly just thrown this out there as a complete gimmick because they're terrified of reform.
They're after your voters,
They're after our voters because they're absolutely terrified. The truth is they've called this snap election because they were terrified of the fact that we're going up in the polls, they're sinking in the polls under sinking Sunak. And they had to sort of say, well, how do we stop this? And so they're just sort of throwing anything out they think might be sort of some form of food for our voters. Well, the reality is our vote is rock solid, and so we're delighted. Well, I've actually won some bets. I think I've won some bets against one of your other presenters here at LBC on the summer election. Look,
LBC.
The truth is that I actually think the country is delighted there's an election. There might be lots of Tory MPs who are despairing. We're more organised and ready and allocated with our candidates, and I think the Tory party is.
Any more defections? Any chance of any more defections during this next couple of weeks?
Let's just wait and see, shall we, Lewis? Let's
You've
just
had
wait
one.
and see. We've had one.
You must have been
I'm
a bit
ambitious,
disappointed.
I'm optimistic. So let's just wait and see.
It must have been disappointed not to get someone like Elphick. I mean, they've been going Labour rather than you, which is a bit of a change.
No, I'm on record as saying actually that Natalie didn't call, but I'm not sure we would have accepted her if she had.
So good enough for the Labour Party, but not good enough for Reform.
Well, they seem to have had quite a lot of problems with her, so that's their issue.
Nigel Farage have obviously said this week that he isn't going to be standing. Are you disappointed by that? Did you try and persuade him?
I'm delighted. I always said that the more help he felt able to give, the better. And he is going to be campaigning with us hard. He's been on a variety of other shows this morning.
Yes.
He's got a full range of events from here on. So look, he's going to be campaigning hard on the key issues, our key policies, and that's great. So that's going to keep our name front and centre. He's the most experienced politician and most recognised politician in this whole campaign.
But did you try and persuade him to stand?
I said the more help you can give, the better. And it's a big personal decision, huge decision for him. He's going to get stuck in. That's great. We're holding the polls. We're going to go up in the polls. I think the Tories are going to continue to slip. I mean, their campaign's been completely chaotic, drowned in the rain, drenched out by the boogie blaster of Steve Bray. I mean, the whole thing's just... And then having a press conference in the Titanic Museum. I mean, talk about sort of images and symbols.
But Farage said that he was more concerned with what's happening in the US.
No, he didn't say that. That's
more important.
That's a complete misrepresentation of what he said. What he said was he's going to get stuck in campaigning for reform during this campaign. But actually, America is our biggest, most important strategic ally in an ever more dangerous world, regrettably. Yeah. And actually, it's really important. He
wants to campaign for Donald Trump, a man who has really sort of cast down on the NATO alliance.
Actually, from a global safety point of view, the world was a safer place. Whatever people might think of Donald Trump's personality, the world was a safer place under President Trump than under President Biden. Putin wouldn't have gone into Ukraine had President Trump. That's my judgment. Also,
isn't that saying that the world was a safer place under Herbert Hoover than FDR? Just because the war happened to start under FDR doesn't mean that it was safer under Herbert Hoover.
It's about respect and fear. And Putin feared Donald Trump. He didn't fear Joe Biden. Iran feared Donald Trump. He didn't fear Joe Biden.
Trump went to Helsinki, right? And he stood next to Vladimir Putin, and he actually said that he was more inclined to believe Vladimir Putin than he was his own security services. That guy did not fear Trump. Come on, we both know that.
Absolute nonsense.
He did say that.
The fact is evident.
So you would vote for Trump?
Look, I don't have a vote. That's irrelevant. The real point is, the reason that Nigel will campaign, I suspect, later in the year in America is because America is a very important ally for the United Kingdom, and they're our biggest singles trading partner, our biggest, most important security and defence partner. It's very important that we have a very strong relationship with the next president of the United States, and that's a more than 50% chance of being Donald Trump.
But you would prefer it to be Trump?
Than Joe Biden. I mean, I think the evidence is clear. Frankly, America was in a better place, and I think our relationship with America was in a better place.
Encourage the Labour Party to make Farage the ambassador? There's been some talk of that. Do you think he'd do a good job?
I think you're doing an excellent job as an ambassador, but I suspect that may not
always
be
very
on
diplomatic.
That may not be on Sir Keir Starmer's shortlist. But there we are.
Let's think about your ideas. Looking through some of your proposals. I mean, you're planning to spend a lot of money. You're going to cut a lot of tax. You're going to spend a lot of money. I mean, this is the imperative.
If people look on our website at our draft contract, it's very clear. So what we're going to do is we're going to save a lot of money that's unnecessarily being wasted in order to invest it. What we're doing actually is essentially we're cutting back off expenditure in order to invest in frontline services.
So on
Here's
income
the first
tax.
thing.
No, I just want to because people won't have necessarily seen. So on income tax, you promised you'll cut NHS waiting list to 0 in a space of 2 years.
On income tax, we'll lift the starting point threshold to £20,000. Right, that takes 7 million people out of paying any income tax.
So you're going to
we're the party of the working class. That's what that proves.
Well, you're going to have massive cuts on income tax. At the same time, you're going to cut NHS waiting lists to 0. How on earth are you going to be able to afford that with those massive income tax cuts?
Exactly, because what you do is we're the only party that's saying actually you've got to invest in healthcare an extra 17 billion a year. You've got to use the independent healthcare sector much more.
Where's the capacity?
Where's the money?
In the independent sector?
There is capacity in the independent sector. That's been confirmed. But because there will be more money available, it will grow massively. That's what happens in markets. But here, let me tell you how you pay for it.
Richard, we will end up with a currency crisis, the likes of which would make Liz Truss...
Let me tell you how you pay for it.
Unfunded stuff, come on.
Lewis, you clearly haven't done your research and read the document. Right, so... If the Bank of England didn't pay voluntary interest on the QE reserves, people like Robert Peston, people like Gordon Brown, lots of economists agree with me, that's 35 billion a year. If you scrap net zero, that's going to make no difference to global climate change, that's 30 billion a year. If you cut out back office waste, £5 in 100, there's vast waste all over the place, that's 50 billion a year. If you scrap HS2, if you reduce foreign aid, all of a sudden... No, the bottom half hasn't.
Well, it's nearly all bit.
Look, our plan shows, Lewis, 146 billion of savings. The government is wasting money everywhere, and that's the reason we're not growing. We've got the longest recession per person since records
You just
began
described
70
yourself
years
as
ago.
the party of the working class. You've pledged to abolish inheritance tax for all the states worth less than £2 million. As I say, you claim your party is the party of the people, part of the working class. Right now, if you're a couple, of course, you can leave an estate effectively 1 million, slightly more than that, tax-free. How many estates, therefore, are worth 1 million to 2 million? Do you know?
The number changes every time. But the point is, what that
7,
actually is, it's an attraction to people to stay in the United Kingdom rather than to leave the UK. And do you know who those people are? They're entrepreneurs, they're wealth creators, they're employers, they're really important people to growing the economy in this country and making us great again.
Inheritance tax.
So by looking at what you want to do is you've got to help the lowest paid, the least well off. That's what our key income tax.
But they're not working
pledge
class
done.
people. Those people who will benefit from that policy, are they?
The working class people.
Top 7,000 estates
the 7
in this
million
country.
people who will pay no income tax by lifting the threshold to 20. What that will also help is those who are trapped on benefits. Does it pay at the end of the week to work or not to work? Actually, that'll give them a huge incentive, so it'll reduce the benefits bill. These are the things that will grow the economy and create a sense of aspiration, and work is a good thing.
I was looking on Rightmove earlier and just looking at your constituency of Boston and Skegness. Do you know how many houses are currently on the market in that constituency for between £1 to £2 million?
No doubt you're going to tell me.
5. So that extremely expensive policy is going to benefit 5 of your constituents. Or
that
maybe
proves
20
my point that we're the party of the working class, because actually our income tax policy will help people in Boston and Skegness more than anybody. Freeing up income tax, lifting the starting point to £20,000. It's an extra net £30 a week for people on
£7 billion. Inheritance tax cuts of that proportion will probably cost between 5 to 7 billion.
You're ignoring the importance of £30 a week net for the lowest paid, the poorest in society, to help pay their bills, to put food on the table, pay the rent. That's what we're saying, and I think that's really important. We're the only party that actually I think is helping the lowest paid. We've got the right policies on energy bills. We should be using our own energy treasure, and actually also on the important issue of immigration. We had the mass immigration figures, complete betrayal by the Tories out on Thursday. And that's adding huge pressure, the population surge, onto, for example, housing. Rents up over 20% in the last 2 years alone. It's the youngest, the least well off, who suffer most. It's simply not fair. Likewise, health, the pressure on the health service with a population surge means longer ambulance delays, longer A&E wait times, longer waiting lists.
Yeah, although a fair few of those people assume... I'm not saying it's not a fact, but I'm also saying that, as ever, there are trade-offs with policy. And, for example, you want to reduce immigration, fine. Some of those immigrants will be people who are coming in to the NHS, and you want to cut the waiting lists completely within 2 years. You're going to do that without any immigration.
If you read our policy, you'll see that actually...
You're going to do that without immigration.
We want to freeze immigration, except essential healthcare related and social care related roles.
That could be quite still a big proportion of immigration still coming in.
The reality is that that's a really important element of it.
Okay.
About 500,000 people leave the UK every year, so you can welcome smart immigration of a similar number. But what you need are public services to be able to absorb the immigration. And immigration's a great thing when it can be sensibly, properly integrated.
What was that graph about that you had? Was that about getting people talking about the graph? Was it another £350 million on the side of the bus? The one that showed a net immigration line from 1066.
Yeah,
Richard, you will know that.
Lewis, you well know the ONS data back in 1067 was high quality, and look, it was a great graph. It was a great graph because what it showed was that basically there'd been almost no net immigration until cumulatively until around about the sort of mid to late 1990s, and then it's absolutely soared. And the last 2 years has seen more people settle in the UK.
It's been a huge change, for sure.
It's been a huge change, and it's the pressure on our services, on our housing, on our health, and it's depressed British wages. And it's simply unfair, particularly for young British people leaving school, unable to get housing, unable to get a decent higher wage job. It's about fairness and about the least well off, isn't it?
In a general election campaign, on a narrow point but important point of parties putting out credible and not misleading.
It wasn't
graphics.
misleading.
Well, it is, because we don't have any data from the Norman Conquest, Richard, as you know. Not a sentence I thought I'd be saying in this general election campaign.
We know we got invaded back then.
Yes, that is true. We do know that. But as you know, the ONS was not especially in fine fettle in 1066.
I'm not sure it's in fine fettle
century.
now. The truth is they've been revising their numbers upwards in the last year. They've revised the numbers upwards for 2022 from 606,000 to 764,000, which is I think about a 24% increase. So the likelihood is the 23 number will be revised upwards. So James Clotterley saying that the numbers have gone down, frankly, I suspect he's going to be proven wrong.
Were you sad to see Michael Gove leave the cabinet and leave Parliament? You a fan of his? Obviously, he was a fellow Brexiter.
Look, Michael, I think, has actually he stands for many things, but he's from a different party. He's clearly whatever people think about him, he's given a lot to British politics. Am I sad to see him go? No, I think he's failed to enact Brexit properly, and so I feel that he's part of the team that have betrayed the opportunity of Brexit so far.
If you don't win in Boston and Skegness,
I will win in Boston and Skegness.
But if you don't, will you resign as leader?
It's a hypothetical.
It is indeed.
Much
like the ONS figures in 1066.
I'm focusing on winning, Lewis. I'm focusing on winning. That's what I'm focusing.
I mean, if you don't win any seats, will you stay on?
We'll win seats. Don't you worry about that.
How many?
I mean, I know you'd love us not to, but we're going to win seats.
I have no view whatsoever about it, Richard.
The more millions of people that vote for us because they actually want change, and that's the reality. If you want socialism and high taxes and low wages and mass immigration putting pressure on public services...
But you're a man of results. If you don't get results, you'll be gone.
And we'll get millions and millions of votes. What I'd like is more votes than the Tory party. And actually...
You think that's possible?
I actually think that's possible. And that's why actually there's no such thing as a wasted vote. And it's offensive to suggest there is. What people want to say is, I want change, I want to vote reform to show Westminster that actually this great country of ours needs reform all over the place. The economy, health, defence, law and order, migration, all these things need reform.
Richard Tice, leader of the Reform Party, saying he will definitely win in Boston and Skegness, even raising the possibility that the Reform Party might win more votes than the Conservative Party. That would be a turn-up.
You have to be an optimist.
Well, when you're leading Reform, I bet that's true.